The following talk was given at the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, California. Please visit our website at audiodharma.org.
One of the central themes of practice of Buddhism is that of impermanence. And in fact, some people have said that all of Buddhism is one thoroughgoing meditation or contemplation of impermanence. That's central to the whole Buddhist enterprise. And it's not unique to world religions and world philosophies and to human beings to put some emphasis that the world is a changing place. Things are changing and transient, things arise, things pass, things are inconstant. And Heraclitus, who made this famous statement that you can't step in the same river twice. So it's not unique to Buddhism, but I think what's unique to Buddhism is how thoroughgoing it explores this topic of impermanence, goes into it deeply. So in Chinese Buddhism, there was a record of a dialogue between a Zen student, a Chan student, and the Zen master. And the student said, what happens, or what about when things arise and they pass ceaselessly? Things arise and they pass continuously. And sometimes there are moments in life where that transient, impermanent, changing nature of our experience stands out in the highlight. It just seems like everything that's going on is arising and passing, coming and going, and nothing seems to be, that's set and permanent. And so this student asked about that. What about this time when everything seems to be arising and passing endlessly? And the Zen master's answer was, whose arising and passing is it? Whose arising and passing is it? And that's the end of the story. And this is one of these teaching stories where it's maybe a little bit perplexing, but the idea is to live with the story and contemplate it, and at the right moment the story might be quite impactful. So I want to go back to the story a little later in the talk. So the word that's usually translated as impermanent is anicca. It's an ancient Indian Sanskrit Pali word. And literally it means inconstant, meaning that the nicca is constant, and the is a negative, so not constant, so inconstant. And that's a different connotations than impermanence. Impermanence suggests for many people the idea that it's here now, but it's going to be gone. And for some people, that's just bad news. Buddhism, they emphasize impermanence all the time. It's all, it doesn't always make sense. It's not going to be here. I mean, some things are kind of a little bit stable. Some things we expect to be around longer than you are. And but we never know. There's no guarantee. And but the idea of inconstancy points to the idea not that things are going to disappear, but that things are coming and going. And so like the sunlight is an inconstant phenomena. You could say it's impermanent, but as long as we don't think of impermanence meaning that it's pointing to someday in a few billion years, the sun is going to disappear, turn off, and we're going to get cold. But the sunlight is inconstant. It comes and goes on a 24-hour basis. Comes and goes, comes and goes. And some parts of our experience have this quality of inconstancy. They're there sometimes, and not there other times. And so some experiences are seen as being very, some things are there for a while and never come back. Some things are there for a while, they go for a while, they come back for a while, they go, they come and they go. And something that's considered very changing and inconstant is not the things of the world, but how we experience them. And it's said that the mind is pretty fickle. The idea that, from a Buddhist point of view, from a meditator's point of view, we all suffer from attention deficit disorder. Because once you sit down to meditate and try to stay present for your experience, for your breath, for example, stay focused, most people find that the mind wanders off so easily. And sometimes it wanders much more easily in meditation than it does in, reading a gripping book or watching a gripping movie or, driving at 120 miles an hour on the freeway. Your attention's not going to waver very much. You're there. And so there's many things in life where the focus, can be quite strong. For me, it was taking exams in college. I actually loved taking written exams in college. I was one of those, strange people. Because I would do a study in preparing for the tests, and then I would kind of be prepared, and I'd sit down for 2 hours or however long it was, and everything would disappear for me but the exam. And when I left the exam room, I felt wonderfully emptied, like cleansed. And my mind was clear, and it was a certain kind of delight, just regardless of how well I did on the exam. I didn't know yet. But just the idea that I got focused. Well, meditation is hard to get that kind of focus sometimes because it's not interesting for the uninitiated, or it's not scary. It's not like you're sitting there watching your breath. And it's not like a gripping novel, like so exciting. It's not like someone's attacking you and you have their they have your attention. It's like, just like a simple, ordinary phenomenon. And that's why it's so valuable to develop concentration and mindfulness on something like breathing, something ordinary, natural, because we're not being supported we're not supported by kind of the mind's tendency to want something really strongly, or be really interested in something fascinating. We're not supported by our fear, or our anger, or our hostility, all the things that kind of can grip our attention. It's just there in ordinary experience. And so we get to see how the mind operates. And one of the things we can see is how much it jumps around. And the nature of how we experience the world is quite inconstant. One moment we're focusing on, probably, on a computer screen. And the next moment we're checking email. The next moment we're checking the news. The next moment the phone rings. The next moment we're wondering about what's in the refrigerator. And the next moment we're, trying to tune out our partners, trying to talk to us. And there's all these moments of going and going and going. So the mind's experience of the moment is quite inconstant, and it generally doesn't stay focused for very long on one particular thing. And this is a kind of very important insight to have about the nature of experience. The way that we experience is quite changing all the time. So the idea of things arising, things pass, is important. That things change is important. That over time things, are relative. That the thing itself might be there in a more constant way, but it changes. For many ways, you've been relatively constant for yourself in your lifetime. You haven't died on yourself yet, and you haven't vanished and then reappeared so much. Basically, you've been around for yourself here in your body, and here you are. And but you've changed over time, and some people, as they get older, at certain turning point, different people at different moments, they realize, I'm getting older. And then there's these moments, pivot moments, where first you're not 20 anymore. And you can't do the things you did before. Your abilities are beginning to decline. And you kind of see, well, maybe if I exercise more, I can keep it going longer. But, it's like at some point you kind of just like, oh, well, It's starting to be that long slide. And at home these days, I started to, last few days, to walk around with 2 glasses on my head. One's on top, so it's close by, and the other's on my nose, and I switched them. One's reading glasses, and one is my normal glasses. And that's the slide. Things are changing. And so, that's, I'm not going to get laser surgery or anything, so. And I remember the moment where I realized that I've worn glasses much of my life. I started wearing when I was 10, I think. I'm nearsighted. But I remember when I must have been about 45 or 46 or something. And I went into a supermarket, and I was interested in getting a bottle of root beer. But I wanted to make sure there was no caffeine in it. So I lifted up the bottle, and I couldn't read the fine print, unless I took my glasses off, and then I could see it. So wow, that's new. So the slide's been going on for a long time. And so the changing nature, and at some point, the changing nature is in the horizon. Some people, at certain age, and again, it varies from how old you are and when this happens. I think some people see on the horizon that they're definitely impermanent, that the end is coming, and it gets interesting when decisions get made, because I don't have that long. I'm not going to get a PhD in physics anymore. I don't have time, or my mind doesn't work so well anymore, or something. It just doesn't make sense now to kind of go to school for 14 years and get a PhD in physics. I might not be around for that. So the idea we kind of, I remember my father-in-law bought a new car, and when he was, I forget how old he was, but maybe he was 75 or something, and maybe a little older. And he said, this is going to be my last car. Chances are this is the last car I buy. So that was kind of an interesting statement. And in fact it was the last car he bought. And so there's change, changing nature, seeing change, seeing that our life's coming to an end. These are all important parts of life, and getting sick, all these things. And so how do we live with this world? How do we live with this change and constancy of the world? I think some people, when they hear this kind of Buddhist emphasis on the impermanence of life, the changing nature of life, and the teacher says, it's downhill from here, and the horizon is coming, it seems like these Buddhists are just party poopers. All else bad news. You come to IMC for bad news. But the impermanence, the idea that things change in a variety of ways, has all kinds of, does so in all kinds of ways. Some things change. They come and they go. They're here for a while and then they're no longer here. And it's a relief. Thank God for impermanence. I had the headache, and now it's gone. Or I had, something, and, I had this very difficult boss, but the boss is gone. And the boss has got promoted, or got shifted over, or got fired, or something. And so, thank God for impermanence. I couldn't have taken, 20 years of this boss. So things are, sometimes the fact that things change and pass is good news. Sometimes impermanence means that new things are coming. It doesn't just mean that things pass away, but new experiences arise. And sometimes that's good news, and sometimes that's bad news. The good boss leaves, and guess who comes to be your boss? Uh-oh, I don't know if I want to, this is going to be hard. It's going to be a tough few years now with this one. Or sometimes the difficult boss leaves and a good boss comes. Sometimes, all kinds of things change over time. And sometimes the change implies good, sometimes the change implies not so nice. But things do change. Your experience change. Who you are in relationship to things change. Your fickle mind, your emotions, your life, how you are with things changes over time. And so you might have the same regular job. Maybe that your job doesn't change from day to day. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. It doesn't change. But boy, do you change. Change with hormones, change with the weather, change with life experiences. And you show up very differently every day. And so that's part of what you see, and that goes on. I worked in a bakery when I was young. And I was we wouldn't call it the prep cook, but I did the prep work for the baker. So I would go in the afternoon and the evening and prepare for people who came in early in the morning to make the bread and the pastries. And I did exactly the same thing every day. And it was kind of fun in some ways, but I did the same movements. And so after a while, I memorized all the movements like a dance. I had the whole bakery to myself in the back room. And it was this dance of measuring and pouring and turning around and grabbing this and all that. And I knew if I'd forgotten something, if I forgot the movement. It was kind of got entered into my body. And but it was really repetitive over and over again. But what was interesting was how much I changed. Day to day, I was in a different mood, different situation, different experiences of my life that upset me, that made me happy, things I was anticipating, being, low energy, high level energy. So it was all this change going on. Things change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but they change. So things change means that what was is not here now. It also means something that wasn't is now here. And that can be either nice or not nice, depending how it is. The third aspect of change and impermanence and inconstancy is that's a particular kind of emphasis of Buddhism, is that change and impermanence, the arising and passing of phenomena, occurs in relationship to other things. There's no spontaneous kind of creation in Buddhism, like something wasn't there and just suddenly appears out of nothing. And there's no spontaneous combustion or disappearance. Things arise, exist, and pass away because causes and conditions come together. So things arise in relationship to other things happening. The day appears because the earth is spinning, and the sun is, not so far away. It rains in relationship to there being clouds. You're apprehensive about going to work because of a relationship you have with your boss. The apprehension is in relationship to something. And so that there's always a relationship, there's always a conditionality, conditions that are in place for this changing phenomena that goes on. And one of the important conditions, one of the important relationships, is a relationship that we have with the changing things, changing phenomena. And our experience of life sometimes is very much influenced by how things are changing. So if something is really nice, something we really enjoy and want to have, disappears, goes, it affects us. Our mood, our emotions, our thoughts, our concerns arises in relationship to the thing that passed away. Things are going to arise, we anticipate them arising, they arise, they're there for a while, and it affects us. If it's a nice thing, we're uplifted and feel happy maybe. If it's an unpleasant thing, we feel maybe kind of discouraged or upset or unhappy about it in some way. But we ourselves are very much influenced in relationship to what's changing at all the time. And this can seem like a simple insight, but it's key to the Buddhist insight of our experience. And in relationship to some of the ancient Indian religions of the Buddha's time, the emphasis on permanence was not so different. The idea that life is impermanent, there's lots of change, it's easy to see. Some of the religions in ancient India emphasize this, but they've emphasized that the world of impermanence is a world of suffering and challenge. There's no reliable, continually reliable happiness to be found in the world of change. You can be happy for a while, but because things are inevitably will change, you can't expect to have constant, permanent happiness if the things that make you happy are changing. So the solution for some people in ancient India was to basically not live in the world of impermanence. The world of impermanence was not the place to abide in, and so there was this idea that there was a transcendent realm. And if you could somehow move your consciousness into this transcendent realm, which has a sense of permanence and happiness and a kind of essential ultimate value, and kind of check out of this world, and in that world you'll be liberated. In that realm of consciousness you'll be liberated. So they created a very strong bifurcation between the world of impermanence, which was considered not such a good place to be in, and then this other world, this ultimate world, which was really transcendent. And so the equation was, if you may put this in a very simple equation, suffering, or impermanence, equals suffering. And so if that's the equation, the only way is to just get out of the world of impermanence. The Buddhist equation emphasizes the relationality that exists between the changing world and ourselves. And the Buddhist equation is, I think it would have to be impermanence times clinging equals suffering. So it's not suffering equals, that's not impermanence equals suffering, it's impermanence times clinging equals suffering. So then you have a choice, because if you take away if you make one of those into zero, so impermanence times zero, you don't get suffering. So the idea is not to check out of this world. The idea is to check out of the clinging, somehow overcome the clinging to experience. And so to have a relationship with the changing world where we're not impacted by the changes, where the mind is not pushed around by it, where the relationship with the changing world is not one where we're basically pushed around by it. Something happens and we're impacted by it. We get upset, we get angry, we want more, we're running away, we're going towards. But rather have the ability to not let the changing nature of the world have any deleterious effect on us. To have a level of equanimity or peace where things change and we can watch it. Things change and we can be present for it, but we're not amoebas. We don't have this amoeba-like mind that automatically reacts to what goes around us. It's not automatic, the connection. So if you leave here tonight, and those of you who drove here or biked here, and your tire is flat, so what happens? Do you suddenly get despair? Oh no, this is terrible. It's hopeless. What do I do now? Then the world of impermanence has you under its control. The world changes, and it has you by the throat because it's impacted you. If instead you go out there and see your flat tire, and you say, "Oh, well, of course, things are always changing, and it changed, and now it changed this way. I wasn't relying on everything being just right, and here it's not right, you know. Some response like that, then you're in control. You're not kind of being impacted and automatically responding to things that change, things that are not how you want them to be. So one of the primary hooks or buttons that the changing nature of the world uses to influence us, to have an effect on us, is our clinging, our grasping to things, our attachments. And so we don't have to live with attachments. We don't have to live with clinging. So the Buddhist approach is to stay in the world, don't transcend the world, stay in this world that we can live in and live with everyone else, but somehow work on that relationship between us and the world. So we're not impacted every time when things change and shift. We're not impacted negatively. We don't lose our center. We don't lose our autonomy. We don't lose our freedom. We don't lose our ability to choose and to be wise in the situation. We don't succumb to the experience. And so then the Buddhist approach is to learn to notice clinging and attachment, and to learn how to develop equanimity, to learn how to gaze upon the experience peacefully. Look at that. Rather than kind of getting all excited and running around in circles or whatever we do. And so this is one of the reasons, one of the purposes of mindfulness practice is to learn how to attend, learn how to see or be aware of what goes on in the world with a kind of clarity where the experience of the world don't push the buttons we have, because there are no buttons, or those buttons are not active or not up front. So we can carry with us a stability, a kind of constancy, a kind of stability of mind. The mind becomes stable, or the heart becomes stable. The heart has a constancy in the changing world. The heart and the mind doesn't change so quickly and easily. It's not influenced so strongly by what goes on around us. And so while the world is seen as being impermanent, the inner life starts becoming more stable. It has a little bit more permanence or stability or constancy. The world around us is seen as very unconstant, but it's seen with an awareness which has constancy in it. It's kind of stable, continuous, here, settled. And one of the paradoxes is that for a mind which is inconstant, meaning a mind which is agitated and thinking and jumping around a lot with a lot of different thoughts and ideas, it tends to project permanence onto reality and want permanence. So if the mind is constantly changing, it kind of sees things out there or wants things out there to be unchanging. When the mind becomes less changing, mind becomes more constant, it tends to see more change out there. And that more inconstancy and more, wow, things are always changing in some maybe subtle ways and big ways. It's always changing. The light is changing through the day, and the people are coming and going, and my feeling, my body changing all the time. I was satiated from lunch, and now I'm hungry, and just all kinds of things are constantly changing and shifting, and it's phenomenal how much they are. So there's a kind of reversal that happens. And part of the reason is that when people are agitated, and the mind is swirling around a lot of thoughts, those thoughts tend to operate by assuming that things, are nouns, are objects. And when we relate things through concepts, the concepts usually don't acknowledge that things are changing, that they're verbs, they're processes. But when the mind is still and quiet and constant, stable, it's not living in the world of thought so much. It doesn't live so much in the world of concepts. And it sees and experiences the present moment much more fully. And as we experience the present moment more fully, it's just we become increasingly aware of how things are constantly shifting and changing. And so the Zen student asked, when things are arising and passing ceaselessly, rising and passing without end, just continuously, what then? And the Zen master says, whose arising and passing is it? So what do you, if you then turn around and look at yourself, what do you identify in yourself as the self that knows the rising and passing? And if the mind is still enough, then you'll see that you can't find anything in there that has the kind of stability that says, oh, that's me. So for example, some people might say it's their thoughts are me. But if you look quietly and stably at your thinking, your thoughts come and go. And who are you when you don't use your thoughts to answer the question? You haven't died. You're still here. But who are you when you don't have a thought to answer the question? And if your thoughts come and go, who are you between the end of one thought and the beginning of the next one? If you kind of get a sense of that, then it doesn't make any sense to use a thought to define yourself. Because if you're not defining yourself, then who are you? What are you then? Are you your emotions? Some people identify very strongly with their emotions, but emotions also come and go. And so if you, and who are you when maybe you identify very strongly with one kind of emotion, but then when it's not there, then who are you? What are you in the gaps between the emotions? Some people identify with their desires or their intentions, but they also come and go. And who are you when they're not there? Because they come and go. So there's something that happens when the mind is quiet and peaceful and settled on itself, not worried or anxious about anything. And it turns around to look at itself, to find who is it that's aware. It's actually difficult to find anything in there. Nothing kind of qualifies if you really look carefully. And if nothing qualifies as the self, who are you? The more interesting question then is, why bother? Who cares? We have a society and also kind of human psychology that is very much focused on wanting to have an identity, wanting to be something and be someone. And for some people it's quite neurotic. For some people it's quite desperate because there's so much challenge, maybe danger in their life, harm that's been done to them. And one of the ways we try to figure out how to be safe is to figure out who we are and have an identity we hold on to. But the sense of identity is a brittle thing. Because to try to hold on to an identity like I'm this way, when everything's always changing, you can't hold on. In fact, the more people hold on to an identity, the more brittle they become. Identities are kind of brittle, especially if you hold on to it tight. Try to prove it and show it to people. And so to be able to turn around the mind, quiet, stable, contented mind, and realize you can't find anyone who is aware. There's awareness, but no one who's aware. There's thoughts, but no one who's thinking. There are feelings, there's emotions, but no one who's emoting. There are intentions, but no one who's intending. Points to a radical new paradigm of how to live in the world. It's one where the clinging doesn't operate. It's one where there's no buttons to push. Because one of the buttons is identity, is some idea, I'm here, me. And I have needs, I want something, I want to be seen a certain way, I want to prove myself, I want to defend myself, I want to apologize for myself. All kinds of I. And not to have the eyes operating, not to have that button, allows for us to operate in the world in a very different way. And it takes a little time to get wise about that, to understand how we can trust this place where we're not clinging to anything, and to realize that we're probably safer going through the world when we don't cling than when we cling. And that's a big, big lesson to learn, that we're safer not clinging than we are when we cling. Because I suspect that a good percentage of clinging is an attempt to try to be safe. So it takes a while to learn that, to relax, to let go, to experiment, to walk into some place and try not clinging to anything, kind of being open, trying not to be anybody, just be transparent, be open, or just be. And get a feel for it. What's it like? Go someplace where it's safe. Like maybe go to the supermarket where no one knows you. And then don't be anybody. And, you show up at the counter with the clerk and see what it's like not to be anything, not to prove yourself or show how smart you are, or not clinging to anything, just there. And see what you learn from that. See if there's another way of living your life where you're relaxed and open. You can watch things change, come and go, but there's a stability, a peacefulness, an equanimity, a transparency, a spaciousness, a stillness, beautiful stillness that can't be there when the agitation of self is there, when the clinging of self is there. So we live in a world of change. We live in a world of inconstancy and impermanence. And we live in the world of impermanence in relationship to it. And it lives in relationship to us. And we can be excessively influenced, affected by how things change. So we have ups and downs by how things are changing around us. Or we can learn to become free, independent, peaceful in the midst of the changing world, so that we're more in charge rather than the world. The world's not in charge of us, but we're in charge of, not the world necessarily, but how we are in the world, how we're affected. And to make that shift, at some point we also begin seeing that one of the ways we stay agitated is by this who, our strong identification, I am. And then to be able to turn strong attention inwards and find that nothing in there, there's nothing in there that can be threatened. That the essence of who we are, it can't be threatened, it can't be harmed. That it's clear, it's spacious, it's open, there's nothing there, but rather than the idea there's nothing there as being bad news, it's like the best thing and best show in town. It's like the best thing not to have anyone in there, because then there's space for what's really in here to express itself. I think that was the topic of last week's talk. That there's tremendous wisdom, compassion, love. There's something that's very unique about you in this world, your gift to the world. Whatever that is, it is a chance to bubble up in the space that's been created when you're not holding on or not preoccupied with self. And then the world of impermanence flows and changes, and both inwardly and outwardly. And learning to trust this flow that flows from the heart outwards, is part of the art of living a free life. So as a way of ending, I would like to encourage you to experiment. Find sometimes, maybe just 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, different circumstances. Find a place where it feels pretty safe to do this, and experiment to the best of your ability to go into that situation without clinging to anything, or without any self-preoccupying thoughts about who you have to be, or what you have to defend, or how you have to prove yourself. Just be there in a simple, open way. It's probably best to do it in a situation where no one knows you. And you're probably never going to see these people again. And it's, they're relatively safe people. So, and then to run the experiment, try to just see what that's like, and see if some of the preoccupied ways you have about being concerned about self, or caught up with desires and how things should be. What happens if you let go of those for those 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What's that like? What do you learn? Does it feel good? Does it show promise? Is it interesting to continue the experiment and try it in other places? What happens if you exercise the muscle of freedom in small little bits here and there? So, I hope this talk of impermanence made some sense. And if you strongly agree, I don't know what I meant to say, if you strongly disagree, say, but there are some things. When you do your little experiment, put aside those thoughts. Don't hold on to them. Don't hold on to anything in those little experiments through the day. Okay, thank you very much.